Hi, you are listening to Baachu Talk, a podcast for government services professionals. My name is Bhaskar, and I will be sitting down with our government services leaders to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn all about their values and collective impact in our society. Today's guest is Shelagh Legrave. Shelagh has been the principal and chief executive of Chichester College since September 2010 and became chief exec of Chichester College Group in 2017. Prior to this, she was the chief operating officer for the college since April 2003. Chichester College Group is a £65 million general further education college group following mergers with Crawley College and Worthing College. The group also opened brand new Haywards College Group recently. The group has a strong international reputation for which it was awarded the Queen's Anniversary Prize for Higher and Further Education in 2005 and trains 1,000 plus overseas students annually. Wow. It was graded outstanding at its last Ofsted inspection in 2020. Prior working to Chichester College, Shelagh spent 5 years as Director of Finance at Roehampton University, London. Before that, 11 and a half years in the City of London with the investment banking arm of NatWest, where her last position was Deputy Chief Financial Officer to the Global Financial Markets Division. Following a Bachelor of Arts in History and Theology at Durham University, Shelagh spent 6 years as an officer in the Women's Royal Army Corps. She's a qualified accountant and fellow of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, CIMA. She chairs the trustees of the Stone Pillow, a charity helping the homeless, and is a trustee of a number of small charities. She also is chair of governors of Bourne Community College. Her interests include running, tennis, and music. Shelagh was awarded the OBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours List of 2015 and appointed Deputy Lieutenant for West Sussex in the same year. Welcome, Shelagh, to Baachu Talk. Great to have you with us. Shelagh, let's talk from the very beginning. Where were you born? And let's talk about your high school and education.
Okay, so I was born in Libya, in Benghazi, only because my father was in the army. And he was a chaplain in the army, and that's where I was born. I'm an identical twin, so my twin sister and I came back from Libya after 6 weeks. Sadly, I've never been there since. And my father left the army when I was 4.5 and moved to Leicestershire. So Leicestershire is where I have been brought up, and I'm still a keen supporter of Leicester City and Leicester Tigers, which is the rugby team.
100%, especially now it's a proud time to say you're a Leicester fan. So did you do your high school education all in Leicester?
No, I did my primary education in Leicestershire, and then I went to school in Hertfordshire for my secondary education.
Wow, that's a big journey from there to close to...
Yes, it was. Well, I boarded while I was there. I had, although I can't say I was brought up in a particularly wealthy environment, but my grandfather paid for me to go to a boarding school.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. And how was it? Do you have any childhood memory of being in a boarding school?
Yes, it wouldn't be my favourite thing to do, but I played a lot of sport. And academically it wasn't particularly strong, but I survived it and you know, got through A levels. Probably should have left in the lower at the end of my O levels in those days, right. But I didn't. So I stayed on to do A levels. Wanted to go to university, and eventually got a place at Durham University to read history and theology.
Wow, so that's great. And after you did your studies in Durham, what was your first job?
I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a feeling I wanted to go into the city, to work in business. My grandfather had been a Lloyd's underwriter, but I really couldn't make up my mind. So I joined the army because my father had been in the army as chaplain. And I joined the Women's Royal Army Corps, and I had I spent 6 years there. I moved around a bit. I spent, my first job was in Aldershot when the Falklands War broke out, and I was working in signals. And then I spent a little time up in Scotland, where I was working with John Blashford Snell on a project to take young people from deprived areas of Britain and give them an opportunity to do some adventure training with some army instructors. That was great fun. Then I went to Germany for a while and was the only woman in an artillery regiment. And then I ended up, after a short spell in Guildford, I ended up in a headquarters in Shrewsbury. And then I left from there.
Oh, wow. You made it sound so simple, Sheila, but I'm sure that,
I would recommend, I had great fun in the army. I played a lot of sports. I played tennis for the army. And it was the start of a leadership journey. So.
6 years with army. What brought you back to city?
Well, I could only have done the short service commission for 8 years, and I decided 6 was enough. And so I sent a whole load of cold letters. And one of my letters was it was at the time of Big Bang in the city in 1986. One of my letters was to the investment banking arm of NatWest, which in those days was called County Bank. And I wrote and said they were looking for somebody to run their communications centre. And I said I was qualified to do that, well, supposedly, because I'd run one when I was in the army. And the manager who was looking for somebody was ex-RAF, and he offered me the job. So I moved into County Bank in 1986 to run their communication centre. In those days, all money in the city was sent by telex, so we were telexing money around the world. And then gradually, I moved more to the finance side, so I was always good at figures. And so I moved in to be a financial controller. And whilst I was there, they sponsored me, in my own time, of course, to complete my accountancy qualification. So I'm a chartered management accountant. And I ended up as the deputy chief financial officer for NatWest Markets, which was foreign exchange, currency options, money market type business. I loved it.
Yes, it just feels like, yeah, it just happened. But I'm sure underpinning a city career, moving away from army to a pretty intense city lifestyle, and from there progressing from where you are to becoming the CFO of the markets. Was there any challenges? How did you adapt yourself?
It was a very male-dominated environment. I don't think there was any political correctness in that office in NatWest Markets. We had lots of people, but I've always been pretty determined. I'm very difficult to offend, and I work very hard. I worked very hard when I was in the city, and so I thrived in that environment. I really enjoyed it, even though it was hard work. And it was exciting in those days. All the dealing was coming off the floor of the stock market, and there were new processes, new things to learn. And I moved around quite a bit in that way. So it was a great time. Yes, of course, it had its bad times, but people were yelling at you. It wasn't the sort of environment that I would ever consider to be conducive to individuals to thrive. But if you were a certain type of person, you could thrive in it.
100%, Sheila. Even today, the number of women leaders we have in the city is far less. And you have one, when was this, 20 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, I left in 98.
Wow.
And I actually only left because I got married quite late in life. I got married in 1997, and marriage and the city was never going to work because I just worked too long hours. And so I decided to look for a job closer to where I lived in Fulham, and I found a job in a university, the University of Roehampton, as their Director of Finance.
It's amazing how you prioritize your life and the marriage than the career. I think, you're so blessed on that perspective. I'm sure some of the listeners can see, sometimes they do take work as their life, and they might prioritize, gets burned down, and then time flies and they realize maybe they could have had a different choice.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Was that the entry to the university sector after you left city, or was there any other stints in between?
No, I left the city and went to the university sector, and I spent 5 years there. I worked for an inspirational woman vice-chancellor, she was called the rector. She was a Roman Catholic nun, and she was in those days my mentor in terms of leadership. She had a great team around her, and she taught me lots of things about how to encourage people to work together, how to make decisions, how important decision making was, what was good communications, how to get everybody to buy into what you were doing. She was great. And I took over a very troubled finance department that needed a bit of help to sort out some of the basic control issues in it. But by the time I left, it was in good shape, and we had a good team. And I really enjoyed myself while I was there. But I became pregnant about 2 years before I left, and decided that we would move down to West Sussex because I didn't want to bring up a son in London. And I moved in 2001, and she was very flexible with me, so I worked sometimes at home, sometimes in Roehampton. And then I looked for a job in West Sussex and came across a further education college. I'd never heard of a further education college before. I had no idea what it did. But I came for the interview as their chief financial officer, and I got the job. And I thought, well, by that stage, people had said to me that funding is very complicated. Do you really want to work in FE? But I thought, well, let's give it a go. Much shorter commute, and I'd liked education. And so I joined a very small team. I was introduced as the token woman to the senior management team here.
Yes, so back to Chichester. Was that Chichester College where you started your further education?
So in 2000, I joined in 2003. 2002, they'd merged with Brinsbury, which was a land-based college, about 21 miles away, and they continued to call themselves Chichester College. So, yeah.
Wow, close to 15, 16 years with Chichester now?
So I've worked here, I joined in April 2001. So I have done, 17, 18 years now?
100%. So, and you would have seen an entire different landscape. That's
huge change over the period. When I came here, further education was quite well funded. It was quite a formal process. The principal then, whose name was Richard Parker, was known as Dr. Parker. But it was we provided good education. Ofsted weren't quite as convinced. 2008, we got what is now requires improvement for our standards. But nevertheless, it was an expansive college. It's a much bigger, the population in Chichester is about 26,000. And we, in those days, had about 14,000 students. So, we attracted many more students than just from the local area. But the great advantage, which is the thing I'm obviously about to go and do, is that we're very close to the train line. So that's we attract students from along the coast, from Worthing and from Hampshire, and then obviously to the north of us from the more rural areas in West Sussex. So yeah, it's a great time. After that, I became the chief operating officer, and I was responsible for various other areas in the college apart from just finance. And during that time, as a college, we were well funded. We had a lot of students, and we were reasonably successful. We were inspected in 2008. We only got required improvements for our standard quality, but apart from that, it was a happy place to work. We've always had a lot of international students, and that continued. We've got 2 halls of residence, and we continue to invest in our estate. So since I've been here, we've built a hall of residence, and then we got involved in the challenges around the Learning and Skills Council, who thought they had lots of money to give us to rebuild our estate, and then couldn't add up in the end and didn't have any. So we wasted a lot of money in professional fees for those big schemes, like many other colleges, and didn't get anything in return. And then in 2009, the principal decided to retire, and they advertised the post of principal, and I applied as the internal candidate, and I was shortlisted. I have to say when I first joined the college, I couldn't conceive of myself in being a principal. I didn't have an education background, and I wasn't sure that was the path I would take. But Richard encouraged me and supported me, and so I applied, and much to my huge surprise, I was appointed the principal. Well, I got the appointment in 2009. I actually took up the post in 2010.
So this is just me being an entirely new person here. What is the role of a principal, and what is the role of a chief exec? Is it 2 different roles, or is it the same?
For me now, there are 2 different roles. So now I'm only the chief executive. But until we expanded the group in 2017, I was principal and chief executive. So the principal is the person who's responsible for the quality of education in the college, and the chief executive role is one ensuring that you'll remain financially solvent, that the business of the college runs smoothly. And they're normally a combined role in a smaller organisation. So at that stage, our turnover was about 40 million. Well, no, not when I started, but by the time we got to merger, it was 45 million. And I held both roles.
Wow. And what does the typical day-to-day or a week look for as a chief exec of a large college group?
Well, it's worth just saying that in 2015 we decided that if we weren't going to shrink, because by this stage we were into recessions and those years when there was no money going into further education, we hadn't had a rate increase since 2010. So we took the decision that we were going to expand or look to expand. And in 2017 we merged with Central Sussex College, which at that stage ran 2 colleges, but Crawley and Haywards Heath, but they themselves were closing Haywards Heath in 2017. So some of the responsibility for the chief executive is certainly working with its corporation, and I am a governor myself, to ensure there is a vision for the organisation, that we have a strategy, and we have measurable outcomes that we are accountable for as a senior management team. So some of it of the chief exec principal role is externally focused, and some of it is internally focused. I think you need to spend time on both. So I have spent a lot of time, certainly while I was the principal, in ensuring that we had a quality system that worked. Chichester College became outstanding as judged by Ofsted in 2014. So we made a lot of changes, ably assisted by my deputy, who's Andy Green, and also by the team around him. I mean, I would never, ever say we'd achieved what we'd achieved because of me. It's about us as a team. So some of my time is spent on ensuring that the students get the best possible experience, and some of it spent on liaising with external agencies, being the college in the local community, being accountable for what we do to grow the economy in West Sussex. And also from a national perspective, I've taken on national roles in the last few years. I currently chair Collab Group, which is a group of 32 large colleges in England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And I've always thought that it's important that further education colleges show what they're good at nationally and take part in the number of different initiatives and policy changes that the government guides us towards. So that is very much focused on national policy, influencing national policy, and also implementing a commercial strategy that is beneficial to colleges. But in Chichester College Group, I have 5 colleges now. So we merged with Crawley College in 2017, 2019 with Worthing College, and this year we've reopened Haywards Heath College. So there are 5 colleges in the group, and that's what takes the time. There are about 1,600 staff, plus a lot of other staff on bank contracts, and about 20,000 students. So it's become a different job over the years, and that's why I'm now the chief executive. So my responsibility is to ensure that Chichester College Group plays its part in the local and national further education community, and that it delivers on its vision to provide outstanding further education. And we were judged outstanding by Ofsted this year in 2020.
Welcome. Amazing. Coming back to COVID, the UK's lockdown has been in place from March, and on and off we are being locked down, off, etc. The moment it hit the news, where were you, Sheila, and what was the first thing you did?
Well, because Chichester College Group has international students, we were aware of the pandemic quite early on, because we have quite a lot of Chinese and Japanese Far Eastern students, and they were starting to say, we think we've got a problem, we think we need to go home. So we became aware of it in January and February. We talked about it. At that stage, I never envisaged it affecting us in the way that it has. After half term, after that February half term, it was clear that the infection had reached the UK through various people bringing it from Italy and other parts of the world. And it became clear that we were going to have to do something pretty drastic in order to avoid significant loss of life. So I suppose about the 15th of March, I was aware we were likely to go into lockdown. And we finally locked down on I think it was the 23rd of March. But we only had a fairly short period of time to work out how on earth we were going to continue to provide education remotely. And government instructions were changing all the time. But what was clear is that we had to remain close to our mission, which was changing lives through learning, and our vision, which is delivering education to everyone we possibly can in the best possible way. So we didn't have a lot of time to plan at all, and it is testament to my staff that they made the adjustments. We continued to deliver. So I've continued throughout to be in my office because my office in Chichester, because we had vulnerable students on site, and I live close, not that far away. And so I came in every day and ensured there was a senior management presence on site.
Wow. So in this crisis, you did mention that the team stepped up, and looking after 10,000 plus students is not an easy task. What have you observed lately that reminded you people are kind?
The people were extraordinary. I think the first challenge was getting our international students home safely. So we had staff who came in at the weekends. We had students who set off for the airport and then their flight was cancelled and had to come back again. We were praised universally by our education partners in Japan and China and the Falkland Islands, where we have students, for the care we took to ensure that everybody got home safely. So the staff running our accommodation block were absolute heroes in managing the return process for our international students. And then for some of our staff, we had to furlough them because we weren't offering a sports centre, we weren't offering much international teaching, some remotely. We have a large nursery, children's nursery, and obviously we could only offer that to very few children, key worker children. So those staff were extraordinary. We had about 10 to 12 students on site in Chichester every day, and we had a team of staff who volunteered to come in and be with those students, and they were extraordinary in the way they gave their time to support those students every day, some of whom came from very challenging backgrounds. We then had a member of staff who decided that he was going to make face coverings for our local GP surgeries because they were very short of PPE. And he was an engineer and he used one of our 3D printers to print out and produce these face masks, which were very much appreciated by our local GP surgeries. We had somebody else who joined with a local company to provide outfits for people to wear in theatre. I'm trying to think of the name of it, scrubs. And they made them on sewing machines. So we have somebody who runs our wardrobe for our acting students, and she came in and sewed these scrubs together with a few other volunteers. We had wonderful celebrations of achievements at the end of the year, even though we couldn't physically see anyone. So people set up activities on our Zoom or Microsoft Teams. But I think equally, we surveyed our students as to whether they were getting good teaching and learning, and the feedback was excellent in really, really tough times. Yes, there were some students we didn't manage to engage with, particularly those students who were on practical courses at the lower level qualifications, where it was difficult to persuade them to do something on screen when they were used to doing something in a workshop. But for the vast majority, we had something like 85% participation across all our courses during the pandemic. And our staff provided the most wonderful teaching practice for those students in the main.
Perfect. So I'm sure now you are gradually welcoming all your students back. Sheila, so how was the return working?
Well, we couldn't get everybody back all at the same time. So in Chichester, we normally have, 3,000 or 4,000 students on campus at any one time. And with social distancing, that just wasn't going to work. So we asked people to plan for 50% on site or 75% on site. It's probably closer to 70% on site, I think, and the rest to being delivered remotely. For some of our students, we could deliver it all on site because they're in very small group sizes. But for others, we've had to split it and certain students come in on certain days and certain students stay at home. So it's been challenging, but I was walking around the college earlier today and there seemed to be calm. People were comfortable with the arrangements we put in place for their safety in the main. And I think we can provide very good teaching and learning for students when they're on site and students remotely. It's not the same. People are wearing face coverings in our corridors and in our restaurants, and there are certain things we can't do. Enrichment activities where you go on trips, we can't offer that at the moment. Work experience, unless it's a mandatory part of their course, we can't offer because we haven't got firms wishing to take students. But we can do a whole host of things if we work hard at it. So I think term has started as well as it could. We have had a confirmed case of COVID on one of our colleges, so that's created problems. We've had to do deep cleans. Some staff have had to isolate, and I'm sure that will continue, sadly.
Yes, Shelagh, 100%. Shelagh, we talk more about college now. Let's spend the last 20-25 minutes about you. Shelagh, how are you adapting to the new normal? How are you looking after yourself?
Well, I'm very keen on sport, and I've always kept myself fit. So I try to run 2 or 3 times a week, and I also play tennis. So I have been rigorous, even if it's half an hour. I'm not running great distances. I run 1 7-miler during the week or at the weekend, but the rest of the time. So I really work hard at my fitness and make sure I've got enough energy to do what I'm doing. And I've kept that up through the pandemic, even though I've worked probably even harder than I normally work in keeping in touch with everybody and reading emails. Emails seem to have multiplied when you couldn't physically see anyone. So I think that keeping fit is really important. I'm a practicing Christian, so I still have been supported through spiritual nourishment, and I've done my level best to find time to relax when I can. I've got a wonderful family, fantastic husband who cooks meals for me during the week, and a son. And they've been very supportive as well. But we obviously haven't done the things we'd normally do. I had tickets for Wimbledon, of course, couldn't do that. But nevertheless, we have managed some downtime, even though it's been at home. We did manage to get to France for a few weeks in the summer, just a bit over 2 weeks, and that was lovely. But it hasn't been normal, but I have managed to look after myself. I think looking after yourself as a leader is really, really key. There's no point in working yourself so that you can't function properly. In order to lead, you've got to be fit.
That's super powerful, Shelagh. So, Shelagh, tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
Well, I'm an identical twin. Not a lot of people know that, but some people do, because my twin sister she's now chairman of a lobbying organisation, but she was chief executive of the British Beer and Pub Association. So she's quite well known in Westminster, and I do get people who meet me and think I'm my identical twin. And despite our age, we still look pretty alike and sound quite alike. That's one thing people wouldn't know. What else would people not know? I sing. I enjoy singing. I sing if I was allowed to, in a church choir. And I love music, classical music and a bit of pop music too. And I suppose I'm a Leicester City supporter. Not many people know that, although probably more people do, because I rarely tweet from a personal level, but when Leicester won the league, I just tweet about that.
100%. So what's your favorite song, Shelagh? And when you think about that song, what memory comes back to you?
Well, I love Queen, so We Are the Champions is one of those favourite songs for me.
Nice.
I enjoy a whole mix of different music. I also love opera, and I've got some favourite operas and musicals. And I also love live theatre, and I was on the board of Chichester Festival Theatre for a long time. So, there's some wonderful songs in opera and things that I love that really will raise my spirits, and orchestral music as well.
Nice. And do you have any warm memories of very first concert or very first pop event that you went, or any musical event?
Very first one.
Do you have any warm memories of the very first musical event that you went?
Oh dear, I would have said it was a musical at a theatre. Was probably the first musical event I went to, and it was probably something like The Sound of Music. Or Showboat, both of which I saw in the West End in probably the 60s or early 70s.
Wow.
I've seen Elton John live, Bruce Springsteen. So I've been to a few live concerts as well, not a huge amount. I don't spend a lot of time going to pop concerts.
Perfect. So what's one trait you really like the most about yourself?
I laugh. I love having fun. And actually, when people have come in here, it's something that we do. We laugh about things. If things go wrong, we laugh. I spent a lot of time removing any blame culture from the organisation. I want people to have fun, and if they make mistakes, they learn from it.
Oh, that's super powerful. So if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do?
I would be a football manager. I would love to be inside the dressing room when Leicester City talks about team tactics and works out how they're going to play a game.
That's interesting. Wow, that's completely random there, but that's good. So if you could be anywhere else right now, assuming there is no COVID, where would you be?
I'd be watching cricket at Old Trafford. Although actually I don't know how the Australians are getting on against the English. I think when we made a score, but not a brilliant score, it looks like from my phone. So that's where I'd be. I love watching live, almost any live sport. I would watch, and I love watching cricket. In fact, one of my ambitions when I eventually retire is to go to the West Indies and watch cricket in the West Indies, go to Australia and watch cricket there, or even rugby, which I equally enjoyed watching.
Wow, that's amazing. So do you ever talk to yourself? If so, what do you say normally?
Oh, I often talk to myself. I'm quite a reflective person, and I sometimes tell myself off for saying something I shouldn't. And I often think through problems, particularly when I'm running. And sometimes I have to talk to myself and remember the positive things. I think it's really difficult being positive at the moment in COVID. And we've just got to remember that there will be a way out of this pandemic at some point. It's just not quite clear at the moment what that way is.
That's nice. Do you have a favorite book or a movie character?
I have plenty of favourite books. I love reading. My favourite book that I use from a management perspective is Jim Collins' Good to Great. He wrote a book about US companies and how they're successful, and I really enjoyed that. From a fiction perspective, I mean, I love Pride and Prejudice, War and Peace, many of the classic writings that will give me an escape from reality. I love history, and I read part of it as part of my degree, and I'll read a lot of things that are historical.
Got it. So if you could eat only 3 food for the rest of your life, what 3 food will you pick?
Chicken,
Right.
vegetables. I love vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
A fruit of some description. Plums, probably.
Nice. Okay. Chicken, vegetable, and plums. That's gonna keep you for the rest of your day. Nice. So
Balanced diet.
100%, considering you're a fit person, it works really well. It works really well. So other than that, is there any other item that you buy normally when you go to shopping? Every time?
I'm not a great shopper. So I love chocolate, is the other thing I love.
Yes, that's good. Because you did mention that your husband kindly cooked for you.
Yes, he cooks and he tends to do the shopping, but
yes. But if I visit your place, what food would you cook for me or any other guests?
I would probably cook a casserole or roast. I cook a roast meal on a Sunday, or even if you're a vegetarian, I cook a vegetarian dish, which will probably be something like vegetarian lasagna or something like that.
I'm totally non-veg, Sheila. So I'll be happy with the roast chicken, and I'm coming to Chichester in the next train. So, if you could meet anyone from history, who would you meet and why?
There's so many people I would love to meet. One of the people I would like to meet is Prince Rupert of the Rhine. You probably will say, who on earth was he? So he was a nephew of Charles I, and he spent a lot of time designing more modern warfare, or guns and that sort of thing. And he supported Charles I throughout the period when Cromwell was attacking him. And he was also a friend of Charles II. And I've always been fascinated by him. I've read lots of books about him. And from a heroic perspective, I would love to have met Mother Teresa, because when I was growing up, she was an inspirational figure in the way that she helped the poor of Calcutta. I've always had a very strong social justice streak in me. She'd be somebody I'd like to have met.
Wow. That's amazing. So what's that one question that you don't like people asking you all the time?
I'm not actually very good at being thanked. I'm not very good at receiving praise.
Yes.
I find that, it's just part of who I am. But if people sit there and say, well, you did a wonderful job or something similar, I'm not very good at accepting that. I just want to move on. And actually, I never think it's ever just me. I think because we are very much part of a team.
Wow. So if, in your life, 45 plus years of successful career, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Well, I think first of all, my grandfather. So my grandfather was a staunch Methodist, and he made a lot of money in Lloyd's of London. And then he left his entire house and what was effectively an estate to the Methodist Church. But his work ethic was tremendous. He was really focused on what he did, but he also cared for young people, and he was always fueling people's ambition to do the very best they can. So he was my first great influence. He died when I was 13, so I didn't know him that well, although his reputation lived on. And I think the other people who've inspired me, the rector at Roehampton inspired me a lot, because she taught me the value of reflective leadership and really thinking through strategies to get the best out of people. And then some of my colleague principals in the sector I'm in awe of and respect, and they inspire me.
So who is the kindest person you know?
I can think of lots of people who are really very kind. My PA is definitely one of them. Her name's Claire.
Claire Lamb, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's nice. So, what's the best year of your life and why?
The best year of my life was 2001, and that's, or 2000 possibly I should say, and that's because I became pregnant with my son, and I'd wanted to be a mother, and I got married quite late in life, and it was an absolute thrill to me, and it's been a privilege bringing up a child who's now 19.
Wow, amazing, Sheila, 100%. So, if I ask your son for a reference about mom, what do you think he would say about Sheila?
I don't think he'd be very polite. So he would say, my besetting sin is patience. I'm the most impatient person, particularly if I'm trying to get in a queue or wait for something to happen. Yes. But he would say that I'm driven, that he's proud of me, I think, in a funny sort of way. He was certainly proud of me when I got my OBE. And he would say that my love of sport is the reason that he now loves sport and spends a lot of time watching it and playing it.
Perfect, 100%. So what is one advice that you would give someone wanting to pursue a similar career like yours in further education?
My advice would be, there's so much difference. There are so many differences you can make to young people and older people's lives in further education, that it's the road for social mobility to work effectively. That you have got to like people in order to lead them. It's very, very difficult to lead people if you genuinely like them and can authentically inspire, or not inspire them, but be authentic with them. But if you love people and you're passionate about education and the difference it makes to people's lives, then being a principal or chief executive, whatever the problems in a further education college, is a fantastic job.
So what's that one common myth as a further education college leader that you want to tell the society, that you want to debunk?
The myth is that further education is a secondary stream of education for those people who aren't bright enough to go to university. So people look at technical and professional qualifications and think, that's not for me, because the only route into work is through a university, and that's absolutely not the case. Plenty of people who have achieved great things in companies across the globe who were apprentices and then went up that route, who completed their further education while they were working, as I did for my accountancy qualification. There's so many different routes. I mean, I'm very passionate about education, but you absolutely don't have to go school, A-levels, university. We teach A-levels. You know, A-levels is a perfectly good route for many people, but it's not the route for everybody, and you can do as well as you possibly can through a further education college.
That's brilliant. So the last question from me is successful career so far in a beautiful family, creating a lot of impact in Chichester and wider community as well. What's next for you, Shelagh?
Well, I'm afraid I'm of an age where probably next is retirement, but retirement with plenty of different things to interest me. I'd love to get involved from a board perspective, perhaps in a sporting organisation. Hopefully I'd be able to continue to support the further education sector. And I'm also chair of a homeless charity. So I will want to continue to work in that field. But I'm not retiring yet, but that will be my natural step.
That's it. Brilliant. So whatever you do, I'm sure you will be an icon that we all are going to look upon. So what's the biggest lesson life has taught you so far?
You don't achieve anything without a lot of hard work.
That's amazing advice. With that comment, we will close this. But is there any part of your life or career, or is there anything else you would like to share to the listeners, Shelagh?
No, I think I've probably shared enough.
Thank you so much, Shelagh, for your time. It's been a privilege to have you with me at Baachu Talk. Wishing you, the family, collab team, colleagues, everybody, all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire everyone around you. Stay safe, stay happy as you always do, and stay healthy.
Thank you ever so much, Baachu. Lovely to talk to you.
Yes, and I'm coming home for your roast soon. Thank you, Shelagh.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Bye. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit baachu.com/Baachu Talk podcast to this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk podcast with your loved ones. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Bhaskar Sundram from Baachu signing off.